Captain Elias Tanner sat alone in the control room of his ship, the Orion's Reach, staring at a blank. The hum of the engines was the only sound, steady and soothing, yet a restlessness gnawed at him. Space was supposed to feel vast, endless, but tonight it felt lonely, almost silent in a way that pressed against his chest. He had spent years exploring uncharted sectors, responding to distress calls, and surviving dangers that would have terrified most. Yet nothing had prepared him for the message that suddenly blinked on his console. It was simple, almost painfully brief. "Do you remember me? I'm the disabled alien woman you helped." At first, he thought it was a glitch, a fragment of corrupted data. But the tone, the structure, the familiarity, it tugged at a memory he had tried not to dwell on for years. Elias closed his eyes and remembered a distant asteroid colony, a place where humans and alien miners worked together on precious ores. That mission had been routine until the habitat collapsed, burying someone beneath tons of rock. Her name had been? He remembered the fear in her glowing eyes, the way her limbs had refused to move properly, how trapped and helpless she had been. Humanity's instinct to survive had clashed with his own instinct to save, and he had acted without hesitation, sending in rescue drones and carefully navigating through the rubble himself. He remembered lifting the heaviest slab by hand, blood running from a cut on his forehead, but the moment she grasped his arm and looked up at him with trust, he had known everything else faded into nothing. That memory returned now like a sharp, sudden flare, and he felt his pulse quicken. The holographic message wasn't just a flicker of light. It slowly coalesced into her form, her alien features shimmering softly. Even through the distortion of space transmission, he recognized her, bioluminescent patterns dancing across her skin, the subtle tilt of her head, the way her eyes seemed to hold both hope and fear. "Elias," she said, her voice trembling in the data feed. That single word carried weight, emotion, and something else he hadn't expected, a connection that refused to fade despite time and distance. Elias leaned back in his chair, his fingers brushing the edge of the console as if touching it could bridge the years. He remembered the strength it had taken to carry her out of that collapsing mine, the long nights in the medical bay where she had whispered thanks and quietly blamed herself for the accident. He had told her it wasn't her fault, that none of it mattered as long as she survived. But he also remembered her determination to prove herself, even while crippled, even while everyone else had doubted her. Now, seeing her message, he realized how much he had underestimated her resilience. The coordinates embedded in the message glowed on the screen. They pointed to a planet at the very edge of human-explored space, a sector uncharted, wild, and dangerous. Elias' mind raced. Why now? Why after 2 years? And most importantly, what had happened to her that she needed him again? He knew one thing for certain: he couldn't ignore her call. That same instinct that had driven him to save a stranger back then, the same instinct that made humans remarkable in the face of impossible odds, was stirring inside him again. He activated the ship's navigation system and plotted a course. The engine thrummed as the Orion's Reach prepared to jump into the unknown. Elias felt a mix of anticipation, fear, and an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. He didn't know what awaited him, but he knew that in the vast emptiness of space, some bonds, like the one he had with, were worth everything. As the stars stretched into streaks of light during the jump, Elias whispered quietly to himself, almost as if she could hear him, "I remember you, and I'm coming." Orion's Reach cut through the darkness of space, its engines humming steadily as stars stretched into long streaks of light. Captain Elias Tanner sat at the helm, eyes fixed on the blinking coordinates that promised answers, and perhaps more questions than he could imagine. Every passing light year felt heavier than the last, carrying with it memories of the alien woman he had once rescued, fragile yet stubbornly strong. He could still hear her voice echoing in his mind, soft and glowing, carrying gratitude and a quiet defiance even in pain. Now she had reached out to him after 2 long years of silence. Something in that act tugged at him, a mixture of responsibility and curiosity that humans seemed uniquely equipped to feel. The planet they approached was unlike anything human charts had ever recorded. Its atmosphere shimmered with colors he had no names for, violet haze blending with flashes of liquid gold in the clouds. Gigantic crystal trees rose from the terrain like the spires of a cathedral, their translucent trunks catching and bending the strange sunlight. Rivers of light snaked through the valleys, glowing softly like living veins of energy. It was beautiful and alien, a sanctuary untouched by humans or most alien civilizations. Elias felt a shiver of awe. He had seen dangerous worlds, desolate moons, and hostile colonies, but this was different. There was a strange serenity here, yet something told him danger was never far behind. When his ship landed on a plateau near a cluster of the largest crystal formations, movement caught his eye. A figure emerged, small, limping slightly, yet moving with a strange elegance. Her body had changed since he last saw her. The accident had left marks, and though she had adapted with mechanical braces that supported her limbs, she carried herself with strength and dignity. Her bioluminescent patterns glimmered softly against the twilight, like a living constellation. She raised one hand as he stepped out, her smile hesitant yet warm, a mixture of recognition and relief. "You came," she said, her voice shaking, but steady enough to cut through the still air. Elias felt his chest tighten. There was more to this than a simple greeting. He noticed the subtle tremor in her brace-assisted limbs, the careful way she placed her feet. It was clear she had been forced to adapt, to endure hardships he couldn't yet see. Yet there was determination in her eyes, the same stubborn spark that had made him risk everything to save her years ago. "I got your message," he replied softly, approaching her. "But why here? Why now?" Eyes flicked toward the horizon, where jagged shadows moved across the glowing plains. Her voice lowered. "They found me again, the ones who chased me after the accident. I thought I could hide, but I was wrong. I need help again." Elia's stomach twisted. The coalition of raiders who had hunted her was relentless, a force he had never faced personally but had read reports about. They didn't just steal resources, they exploited knowledge, capturing those who could invent or create, twisting them into weapons. Had survived, but she had never truly been safe. As they spoke, Elias helped her to a nearby outcropping where the crystals formed a natural shelter. He examined the intricate modifications she had made to her brace, the adaptive tools that would allow her to survive attacks, manipulate her environment, and defend herself despite her limitations. It was remarkable, a testament to both her intelligence and determination. Yet he noticed her hesitation, the way her shoulders tensed as if admitting she needed him was somehow wrong. He reached out and gently touched her arm. "You're not a burden, you never were." Her gaze softened, gratitude shining in the glow of her bioluminescence. For a moment the tension lifted, replaced by the quiet hope of reunion. Yet both knew the fragile peace wouldn't last long. Somewhere in the shadows, danger was already circling, waiting for a mistake. Elias felt the familiar fire in his chest, the mix of fear, responsibility, and courage that had defined humanity's greatest moments. He knew he had to protect her, not because he had to, but because he could, and because some bonds demanded action, no matter the risk. As the twin suns dipped below the crystal horizon, Elias and prepared for what was coming. 2 years of distance, hardship, and survival had brought them together again. And somewhere in the glow of this alien world, the human heart beat fiercely, ready to face the impossible. The glow of the twin suns had faded, leaving the crystal forest bathed in soft violet light. Elias Tanner and moved cautiously through the towering crystalline trees, every step echoing on the translucent ground. The air was thick with a strange energy, and the soft hum of the planet seemed almost alive, as if it could sense the tension between them and the approaching danger. Elias had always known space was unforgiving, but this world had a fragile beauty that made him want to protect it, and even more fiercely. Stopped suddenly, her eyes narrowing as a shadow flickered among the trees. She gripped her exoskeletal brace, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with anxiety. "They're here," she whispered. Elias' pulse quickened. The raiders, the same ones who had hunted her years ago, were closer than he expected. These were not ordinary pirates. They were merciless, precise, and they had been searching for reasons he could barely comprehend. Their goal was simple: capture her knowledge, exploit her ingenuity, and eliminate anyone who interfered. Elias clenched his fists. He had faced danger before, but nothing had ever felt personal until now. As they reached a natural clearing, revealed the defenses she had prepared. Holographic barriers shimmered in midair, subtle traps lined the ground, and strange devices hummed softly, waiting to respond to intruders. Each innovation was a testament to her intelligence and resilience. She had built them not only to survive, but to challenge anyone who dared to threaten her. Elias looked at her with a mix of awe and pride. Despite her physical limitations, She had transformed them into strengths that could rival even the most technologically advanced adversaries. Yet beneath her strength, Elias noticed something fragile. She hesitated, her movements careful, almost protective of him. "I've never asked anyone to fight with me before," she admitted quietly. Her voice carried a vulnerability that struck Elias deeply. Humans had always been capable of great courage, but he realized that courage was amplified when it was shared. She was asking him to stand beside her, to trust him with her life, and he felt an overwhelming urge to say yes, without hesitation. Their conversation was interrupted by a low, menacing hum that rolled through the crystalline trees. Shapes emerged from the shadows, sleek black ships descending slowly, armed with weapons designed to pierce both metal and flesh. Elias felt a surge of protectiveness. He had rescued her once, but this time the stakes were higher. He couldn't just act on instinct. He needed a plan, coordination, and the relentless determination humans were known for. He turned to. "We do this together," he said firmly. Her eyes glowed softly in response, a silent promise that she would fight beside him. The first raider scout approached, its movement unnervingly smooth, scanning for any sign of life. Triggered one of her traps, a field of energy that bent light and distorted perception. The scout faltered, its sensors confused. Elias used the moment to prepare his own weapons, aligning energy cannons that could fire precise bursts into the incoming ships. They were a strange pair, human instinct and alien ingenuity combined, a synergy that neither enemy had anticipated. As the night deepened, Elias watched maneuver through the clearing, her brace-enhanced limbs moving with surprising agility. He realized something profound. This was not a rescue. It was a partnership, a demonstration of what humans and those they protect could achieve when trust and courage were combined. Despite the danger, despite the fear, he felt a sense of hope. Together they had a chance, not just to survive, but to prove that no force, no matter how powerful, could easily break the bond between them. The shadows of the past were closing in, but Elias stood firm. In the quiet moments between attacks, he realized that humanity's strength wasn't just in technology or strategy. It was in heart, in determination, in refusing to let fear dictate action. And tonight, that strength would be tested like never before. The stillness of the crystal forest shattered in an instant. From the sky, massive raider ships descended, cutting through the violet haze like dark knives. Their hulls gleamed black, covered in jagged energy conduits that pulsed ominously. Elias Tanner felt a jolt of adrenaline surge through him. This was no ordinary fight. These were the predators who had hunted relentlessly, and now they had found her. His hand clenched the controls of his ship's weapons, and he felt that familiar human determination, the raw, unyielding drive to protect, to survive, and to never back down. His movements were a mixture of urgency and precision. Her mechanical braces hissed softly as she darted across the glowing terrain, each step calculated, each motion reinforced by ingenious adaptations she had engineered herself. Energy shields shimmered around her, responding to the faintest threat. "Stay close," she shouted, her bioluminescent patterns flaring bright with warning. Elias pivoted the Orion's reach, using the ship's low orbit to block incoming plasma bolts. Sparks flew as energy beams struck crystal trunks, scattering shards into the air like glittering rain. The beauty of the planet turned deadly in moments, every step a potential trap or lifeline. The first wave of raiders landed near the clearing, their sleek combat suits reflecting the violet light, moved among them like a shadow, activating her traps. Gravity fields bent under her control, tossing attackers into the air with precision. Elias fired bursts from his ship's cannons, coordinated with her signals. Every strike was calculated yet unpredictable, a chaotic harmony of human audacity and alien ingenuity. The raiders faltered. They were organized, ruthless, but they had never faced a human-alien team like this. Despite the chaos, Elias noticed the strain in its movements. She winced as her brace adjusted, and her breaths came in shallow, measured bursts. He realized the fight was taxing more than just her body, it was testing her spirit. Humans had always drawn strength from desperation, from the instinct to protect, and now he understood that courage came from the same source. She refused to yield, not because she had no fear, but because fear had never defined her. He felt an intense admiration, mixed with the deep, protective urge that had driven him to save her years ago. The raiders regrouped, pressing their attack with heavier weapons. Plasma cannons roared, lighting up the crystal forest in blinding flashes. Elias maneuvered his ship into a defensive orbit, deflecting attacks and giving the space to move freely. Her eyes glowed with determination, and despite the chaos, there was a strange rhythm to her actions, a dance of survival that was beautiful and terrifying all at once. He called out coordinates, guiding her through the most dangerous spots, each word carrying the weight of trust and unspoken care. Suddenly, an enormous explosion rocked the ground. A massive crystal formation collapsed, sending shards raining like deadly glass. Elias and were thrown apart, separated by debris and chaos. Elias crawled across the jagged terrain, heart pounding, scanning for any sign of her. Panic surged through him, a rare and dangerous emotion. Was trapped under a fallen spire, her brace damaged, sparks flickering along its joints. He shouted, running to her side. She struggled, her glowing patterns dimming slightly, but her gaze met his. I can't, she whispered, her voice trembling. Elias ignored the searing pain in his arms and legs, lifting the heavy crystal with sheer determination. Yes, you can. We do this together. His voice was more than words. It carried the essence of human resolve, the unshakable belief that no one would face danger alone if they had someone who cared. With one final heave, he freed her, and together they rose to face the raiders once more. Exhaustion tugged at every muscle, but their combined will forged an unbreakable bond. Human heart and alien intellect united against impossible odds. As the raiders paused, regrouping for the next strike, Elias realized something profound. Survival was not just about strength, firepower, or strategy. It was about courage, trust, and the willingness to act when everything seemed lost. And in that moment, he knew that no matter what came next, he and would face it together, and they would not fail. After the first wave of attackers had been driven back, the crystal forest was eerily silent. The air smelled faintly of ozone and scorched crystal, and jagged shards of glass-like trees littered the ground. Captain Elias Tanner crouched behind the fractured remains of a massive crystal trunk, breathing heavily. Both were bruised and exhausted, yet the battle had not ended. Elias watched carefully, noticing the subtle tremor in her limbs, the way her brace struggled to maintain balance after each sudden movement. She had fought brilliantly, yet now the weight of the fight pressed down on her more than any weapon could. Lowered herself to the ground, the glow of her bioluminescence dimming. I don't know if I can keep going, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Her hands shook as she adjusted her brace, checking for damage. Elias' heart clenched. He had faced impossible odds before, but there was something about watching someone he cared for doubt herself that cut deeper than any enemy attack. He kneeled beside her, placing a hand over hers. You're not alone. You never were, he said firmly, his voice steady, carrying the weight of human resolve. She looked up at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. But I'm broken, I can't move as fast, I can't fight like I used to, maybe I'm just slowing you down. Her words were heavy with guilt, a burden she didn't need to carry. Elias shook his head, gently lifting her chin so she met his gaze. No, you're not slowing me down, you're teaching me something. You've survived when no one thought you could, and that's more than any weapon could do. Strength isn't just about speed or power, it's about heart, courage, and refusing to give up. You have that in spades. A soft hum vibrated through the air, signaling the return of the raiders. Elias exchanged a glance, fear and determination mirrored in both their eyes. The next wave would be tougher. The raiders had learned from the first clash, adapting to her traps and his tactics. The thought of failure loomed over them like a storm, and momentary doubt threatened to hold them back. But Elias refused to let it. He pulled her to her feet, steadying her carefully, feeling the pulse of her brace against his hand. We do this together. You're not weak, you're human and more than human at the same time, and together we're unstoppable. Her glow returned, faint but steady, and she nodded, determination replacing fear. Elias watched her assemble new defenses, every movement precise despite her exhaustion. She was brilliant, adapting traps mid-setup, modifying energy fields, and reinforcing barriers where the raiders would likely strike. Her mind was sharper than ever, and though her body carried scars and limitations, her intellect was untouchable. Elias realized that sometimes the greatest battles were not fought with weapons, but with courage, ingenuity, and the refusal to surrender to despair. Minutes passed, stretching like hours, until the raiders struck again. Their ships hovered menacingly above, and scouts darted across the glowing terrain. moved with calculated precision, her brace assisting her, her traps disorienting the attackers. Elias covered her from above, guiding his ship with exacting maneuvers that kept incoming fire at bay. Every moment demanded trust, coordination, and relentless focus. They were a team, forged through desperation, struggle, and mutual respect. As the clash continued, Elias realized that this fight was more than survival. It was a test of spirit. His courage in the face of doubt had reminded him why humanity had endured across the stars, because humans refused to give up on themselves or others, even when all seemed lost. And as he watched her stand firm despite pain, despite fear, he felt an unshakable certainty. Together they could overcome anything. For the first time in the battle, Smile returned, small, quiet, but radiant. She whispered almost to herself, "I won't fail." Elias gripped her shoulder, a silent promise echoing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together, unyielding, unbroken, unstoppable. The raiders advanced once more, their dark ships slicing through the violet sky, weapons primed and scanning for life. Elias Tanner adjusted the Orion's Reach's orbit, firing precise bursts to disorient the attackers while keeping safe on the ground. Her brace hissed as she moved through the glowing crystal terrain, activating traps and deflecting attacks with uncanny precision. Every pulse of energy, every movement, was a testament to her intellect and adaptability. Elias felt a swell of pride. The woman he had once rescued was no longer fragile. She was brilliant, resourceful, and unyielding. Despite the chaos, a sense of rhythm developed between them. Elias guided the ship's fire, coordinating each shot with the openings created. Her traps bent gravity and twisted light, causing the raiders' sensors to fail repeatedly. She had learned from past failures and was improvising at a level that expectation. Elias marveled at her ingenuity. "Your traps are holding them off longer than I imagined," he shouted over the roar of explosions. His glowing eyes met his with a faint smile. "Then make it count," she said, voice firm, filled with renewed determination. The battle intensified. Raiders landed in small pods trying to flank her, but Elias anticipated their moves, warning her in time to adjust her path. She darted and twisted with mechanical precision, luring the enemies into traps that bent space and crushed their machinery. It was a dance of chaos and control, human strategy paired with alien genius. They were in perfect sync, neither relying solely on the other, yet completely dependent on one another's skill. Elias realized that this was more than survival. It was the kind of synergy that could only emerge when two lives were bound by trust and shared struggle. Then a massive raider ship broke through the outer defenses, larger and more menacing than any before. Its weapons fired continuous streams of energy, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Brace strained under the shockwaves, her breaths coming faster, but she refused to stop. Elias piloted the Orion's Reach close, using its shields to absorb blasts and create a narrow corridor for her to maneuver. "Keep moving, use the terrain," he commanded. She twisted her body, activating a trap that amplified the crystal energy beneath them, creating a localized shockwave. The raiders faltered, their ship destabilized, wobbling above the shimmering trees. It was the turning point. The raiders had expected fear, they had expected hesitation. But the combination of human unpredictability and alien innovation was something no one could anticipate. His brilliance, Elias' leadership, and the raw determination to protect each other became a force stronger than any weapon. One by one, the raiders' ships faltered, their pods captured in traps, their soldiers thrown off balance. The forest, once a fragile sanctuary, became a shield and a weapon under his guidance. Elias' mind raced with admiration. Humans were resilient, adaptable, and relentless, but what they had here, what they had together, was beyond ordinary. They had turned desperation into strategy, fear into action. And in the midst of the chaos, he saw it clearly, had transformed her limitations into strength, her vulnerability into an advantage. She was more than the woman he had saved. She was a partner, a force, a reminder of what humans and those they protect could accomplish together. As the last raider pod was disabled and the larger ship limped away, Elias touched his arm. "We did it. We actually did it." She smiled, glowing softly, exhaustion mixed with pride. "We together," she replied, her voice firm but gentle. Elias realized that this battle had tested more than skill. It had tested trust, courage, and heart. They had survived because they believed in each other. For the first time since the attack began, the crystal forest seemed at peace again. The twin suns' faint light reflected off the shattered crystals, illuminating the bond that had carried them through the impossible. Together, human and alien, they had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious. And in that victory, Elias felt a profound truth. When humans chose to protect, to act, and to trust, they could achieve the impossible. The last echoes of the raiders' attack faded into the violet night, leaving the crystal forest glowing softly under the dim light of twin suns that had dipped below the horizon. Captain Elias Tanner and stood amidst the shattered crystals, their breath still heavy, but their hearts lighter. The battle had ended, not because the enemies had stopped, but because they had proven something far stronger. Courage and trust could outmatch any force, no matter how relentless. Elias looked at her, seeing not just the alien who had once needed his help, but a partner, a friend, someone whose brilliance and determination had saved them both. Lowered herself onto a fractured crystal bench, her brace humming softly as it stabilized her limbs. She was bruised and tired, yet her glowing patterns flickered like tiny stars, reflecting both relief and pride. I couldn't have done it without you," she said quietly, her voice catching with emotion. Elias knelt beside her, placing a steady hand over hers. "You never needed me to do this alone. You were always strong. I just helped carry part of the weight." The words were simple, yet full of truth. In that moment, Elias realized that heroism was not just about saving lives. It was about standing beside someone, believing in them, and refusing to let fear dominate their choices. She looked at him, eyes wide and glowing softly. "I was afraid of failing, of being weak, but you reminded me, humans don't give up on people, not really. You fight when others can't, you protect when others hesitate. That's incredible." Elias smiled faintly, feeling warmth spread through him. He had always thought humans were ordinary, prone to mistakes and fear. But in moments like this, he understood why humanity had endured across the stars. It wasn't just technology, not just strategy. It was heart, compassion, the willingness to risk everything for others. Leaned back, exhausted but serene, her glowing patterns dimming gently with calm. Elias studied the alien landscape around them. The crystal trees that had once been now reflected the soft light like countless candles. He realized that every scar, every shard of crystal, every moment of fear had led to this peace. And in that peace, he understood the profound connection they now shared, one forged through danger, struggle, and mutual respect. This was not merely gratitude. It was a bond beyond words, stronger than any fear or obstacle. "Do you think they'll come back?" asked quietly, the shadow of caution in her tone. Elias shook his head. "Maybe, but we're ready now. We've survived worse. And more than that, we've survived together. Whatever comes, we'll face it side by side." Her bioluminescence pulsed softly, a rhythm of trust, hope, and unspoken promise. For the first time in years, allowed herself to believe not in luck, not in escape, but in partnership. And Elias knew that no technology, no starship, and no weapon could match that human-alien synergy. The night stretched quietly around them, and Elias realized how much he had learned from this journey. Had taught him that strength was not only physical, that courage could manifest in patience, ingenuity, and determination. That even when the body was limited, the mind and heart could create miracles. Humanity's gift was not domination, but the will to act, the courage to protect, and the ability to inspire others to rise above fear. And now, standing beside, he understood that those qualities were not just his. They were theirs, shared across species, across worlds, across impossible circumstances. Finally stood, using her brace to steady herself but moving with grace. She extended her hand toward Elias. "Thank you for remembering me, for believing in me." He took her hand, gripping firmly, feeling the pulse of life, determination, and trust. "I'll always remember you," he said, "and I'll always stand with you, always." The wind whispered through the crystal forest, carrying a promise across the alien landscape. That courage, compassion, and human determination could turn the impossible into reality. And as Elias looked toward the horizon, side by side, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, echoing the truth they had proven together. Humans could protect, inspire, and achieve greatness not through power alone, but through heart. They did not need words to know it, they simply knew.